crew to save the day.
The Mighty House crew is on the job. This is
Mighty House.
Hey, we're back, and today, Rich, what are we going to do? We're going to talk about
protecting yourself from flood damage.
flood.
Or what to do after the flood.
That's right, flooded basements. So stay tuned. And before you do that, let's go down here. Let's click on that subscribe button. Dingle on the bell. That way you get notified next time we post a video. And with that, let's try to get started. Let's give us this first picture there, Sonar. What do we got there? There, you got a flooded basement.
Flooded basement.
That's a swimming pool, right?
Yeah, well, notice this extension cord laying in there. How fast are you going to run down into that water, Rich?
Ooh, not too fast. Well, we have a way to check that.
Oh, yeah, we do. That's right.
So this is part of one of our Klein toolkits. And
Yes.
This is the multi-tester and outlet tester. And then this is what we're talking about. This little baby down here, which is the NCVT3P voltage tester and flashlight.
Yeah.
Now what this does is it senses voltage. So if you were to turn this on and go by an outlet, it would beep.
Right.
If you go to your basement and you pass this over the water, if the water is electrified, it will beep.
Yep.
And that means do not enter the water.
Yep.
So if you've got a finished basement and you may have outlets underwater, do not assume they've shorted or whatever. You could step into electrified water, and if you ground yourself, you become the path.
There you go.
That's it right there.
So, and you can see that shot, previous shot there, had the extension cord laying in the water. You don't know if that's plugged in, if that's got a nick in it. That could be shorting out. So then you step down in the water, and maybe you slip on something, and you grab a pipe, you ground yourself out, and boom, you're gone instantly.
You're gone.
Done.
And it's very simple. So yes, do not. That's why when you hear "don't go in the basement if it's flooded," blah blah blah, people go, "Oh, I'm good." You know, you don't know unless you know for a fact that water's not electrified or you ground yourself. You know, it's a big deal.
Right.
So
be careful.
Boots, rubber boots, stay dry, the whole 9 yards, and don't touch anything if you're wet.
That's right. There you go.
So
Okay, safety briefing's done. Next.
yes.
What do you do with the water heater? Now, this is a gas one, so if this floods, and you can tell that's got the little the piezo switch on there to ignite it and get it started. If you have an older version that just has a pilot light, you can probably just put a torch in there, dry it out, and fire it right back up. With these and the piezos, you can open them up and let them dry out a little bit and just keep, hitting the spark arrestor there. Keep hitting it until you get a spark inside. Then you can turn on to your pilot and fire it back up. And
A lot of those still have a manual light on them, like, you know what I mean? So I don't know if you can bypass it, but I suppose you could just pack the whole water heater in a bag of rice and let it dry.
Yep. I don't know, 90% of the time they're going to fire back up, and be okay. So you might need a new thermocouple or something like that to get it running.
Right.
But
the igniter, whatever, either one, right? But the other thing, like, and we get into, what to do, and we'll get there in a minute, but I mean, getting it dried out as quickly as possible is really key. You
Yes.
know what I mean? You don't need it building up.
right. And if you've got a fancy or electronic one, or maybe you've got a tankless that gets buried, a tankless one is probably going to be a different ballgame. You may not be able to get that fired back
Now
up.
it's pretty much toast, I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a condensing water heater, and I think if I ever got it underwater, I'd pretty much just write it off.
Yep.
There's too many boards and things in them now. I mean, it's not a water heater anymore.
Correct. So basic water heater, great. If you're a flooded basement, that you can fire back up. Some of the other ones you may not be able to. An electric water heater, I don't know if you'd want to turn that back on if you were standing in the water and it was still wet. So, be careful if you've got an electric water heater and it's in the basement like that. So next up is...
Typically your coils are up high.
Yeah.
It depends where the water level was. You should have a water line on there, but your coils are up high. Your electrical usually comes in through the top. But all the same, I mean, I would just leave that breaker off.
Right.
Until everything is dried up real well.
Exactly.
Is that why you guys put electric water heaters higher up on the wall most of the time, because they're smaller and just in case it it goes, or do you guys just
No,
lay it down
so
on the
like
ground?
in the Chicago area and so on, you would put if it was a 30-gallon electric water heater, it'd look like a 30 or 40-gallon, it'd be normal looking. And
Oh,
you
I
would
mean
sit on the
on-demand
basement
water
floor
heater.
and just have electrical connections at the top. Where you see them mounted higher is areas where, like I live, where we have what we call base flood, and that's hurricane. So we figure the worst storm surge we'd have is 11 foot. So my base flood might be 11 foot. And my water heater, the bottom of the water heater has to be at 12 foot above sea level, so that I'm 1 foot above base flood.
Got it.
So that's why if you walk in my garage, my water heater is sitting on a 2.5 foot tall stand.
Oh, okay.
That puts me a foot above base flood. So now my insurance covers it, and it should never be underwater.
Interesting. So he's
And if
also
it is,
asking about the
I'd have
tankless
problems.
and why we mount those on the wall. That's just because it's easy to service when they're right here versus
Right.
having to bend over and kneel down. You know, you don't want to do that. So
Fair enough.
that's why those are mounted on the wall, because they're easy to service at eye level.
Right. But
So-
again, that's an added benefit that they're not sitting on the floor, that if you do get you got 5 inches of water in your basement, your water heater's 3 feet above that, and
You're fine.
That's a bonus. So
You're fine. Furnace.
same thing. Furnaces, boilers.
Yeah. These tend to have more electronics in them, and these can burn out and fry the circuit boards in them. So you may need to replace your furnace faster if it got up into the electrical parts. If it's just down in the bottom where the blower's at, the blower can dry out, you'll be fine, and it'll fire back up.
But again, it's another electrical appliance. If your thermostat's on the first floor, the air conditioning's demanding or your heat is demanding, so it's trying to run, and unless it blows the breaker, it's sending electricity to that blower motor.
Right.
So again, there's another source of potential electrification of your water. So again, that's why you don't walk out there. Make sure you turn your thermostat from heat to cool to off. So that you don't go down there and all of a sudden it demands, and then all of a sudden you get fried. You know what I mean? So
Right.
milliseconds.
Right. Next up, what are we going to do with all the walls, the baseboard? Do we really need to cut all this out like this, 3 feet up, expose all the framing, and put these blowers in there and dry it out, pull all your flooring out?
Well, again, it goes back to building for it, right? If you live in a flood-prone area, then, we don't put drywall on the walls. You can do
Right.
all your walls in Durarock and skin coat it. And it's non-organic, never have to worry about it. Metal studs, don't have to. Typically, we'll pull the baseboards off and drill holes between the studs.
Right. And then you can they actually have these blowers like this that have small tubes that'll blow air through there. The other thing you can use is the fiberglass drywall, so it doesn't have paper in it. So
Correct.
we do steel stud, then you do the fiberglass drywall, and then we'll use a PVC baseboard too. And then epoxy coat the floor. Now there's nothing that's really going to
Right,
be
but
organic.
even a lot of the, luxury vinyl.
Yes, that'll
just,
work too.
It just snaps together and it's inorganic. So, yeah, it's people that put hardwood on a basement floor that are asking for trouble.
Yeah, they are. So if you've got a basement like this that has the older framing and stuff, you may need to cut that out and get rid of it if you can't get it dried out fast enough. But if you call these companies out that have these blowers, a lot of times they'll just drill holes in the baseboard, like Rich said, set up the tubing and blow air through them and dry them out pretty fast. And as long as
But
you
I
get
think
them dried
touched on
out,
the key. It's if you can get to it soon enough.
Right.
Key is to do this within like 48 hours.
right. And as long as you're starting to dry it out and you're removing the moisture, that mold and mildew will not grow in there. So
Right.
you got to just get on it fast. So that's so
Do we need to bleach it then?
right. So if all your stuff's floating like this, are you going to bleach it?
No, that's going out in the scrap pile.
Yeah.
But again, yes, all that stuff should be carried out as quickly as possible. Get it out of the house, get the water out of the house, and then get the walls opened up on the bottom so that they can begin to dry.
Right.
Key is getting the water out of there. But your recliner, it's probably toast.
Yeah. And the bleach, I wouldn't be using bleach on anything.
No, it's not necessary. Like you said, you got good 48 to 72 hours of starting to get it all out and dry it out. If you can get that humidity from 100% to below 68% humidity, you won't get the mold growth.
Right.
So the key is to get that out of there and get that, that humidity down, dehumidification, blowers, fans, just get that air moving.
Right.
You could survive that.
And if you've left it too long and it is starting to mold and mildew, you don't want to put bleach on it anyway, because that's just going to make it grow back faster. So you want to use a hydrogen peroxide type mix or some of those mold cleaners that are designed for that, and they don't have bleach in them. They'll have hydrogen peroxide type products in them. So that'll actually clean them instead of feed them.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're going to have to toss the furniture and your personal items. It's just...
Yeah, that stuff's going to have, you can wipe it down. A lot of stuff you can wipe down, but like that stuff, those leather chairs, I think those are going out to the dump. So, does insurance cover this? We've been kind of touching on this here and there. Is insurance going to cover a basement flood?
So you're going to have to come up with the cost. So if you live on a river or a lake and the lake overflowed, that's flood.
Right.
And unless you have a national flood insurance policy, your insurance company is not going to cover it. If your basement flooded because of sewer backup, storm drains, whatever, they're not going to cover it either unless you have storm or sewer backup insurance.
Right.
So if you live in an older home in an area where you have, particularly Chicago with combined sewers, and you really think that you're susceptible to this, I would seriously have a discussion with my insurance agent before you get your policy right before something happens.
Right. And a lot of times the policies will state that they do not cover anything below grade. So that is all your belongings down there. That's all your files, anything you're storing in the basement. That's also your water heater, your furnace, all that stuff. Your washing and dryers, they're not going to cover any of that stuff. So if it's a concern, then you might want to call your agent and have that added to the policy or find out how much it's going to be.
And you said
We'll find out how
below
much it is.
grade,
So,
right?
like, I live in a flood-prone area, right? We get hurricanes, we get floods. My national flood insurance policy is $630 a year. It's the absolute minimum they charge. So if you live near a river, but it's not, maybe you're a quarter mile away, but and that river floods like it did out west a couple of weeks ago out through out through Yellowstone and that.
Right.
So 1 in 1,000 flood, 1 in 1,000 year flood, but there's a lot of people out there that are devastated and they never had flood insurance, and $600 a year, not that much.
Right. And what were you saying?
And you said
for 2
it
months for TV.
Yeah.
And you said it was below grade, not
Correct.
below sea level.
Yeah. Around here, we're 700, 800 feet above sea level. We don't have that issue like Rich does in Florida, but around here, it's below grade is what they say. So, if you have a split
Water
level,
seeks the lowest level.
Sure.
Might only be 12 feet above sea level, but the water, when it rains here, is still trying to get to sea level.
Sure.
You're 700 feet above sea level. It's trying to get to 692 feet above sea level, which is your basement floor.
Right. Yeah, that's it. So check with your insurance agent, find out for sure. And you might want to investigate it a little bit. What caused this leak? Was it a floor drain like Rich was talking about? This is combined with the sewers and the storm sewers outside. The streets filled up, and then your basement was overflow. And they used your basement as just as a stormwater retention area. So,
and I've seen that in Oak Forest. It was a rain event where the storm sewers filled.
Right.
The water was blowing out of the storm sewers, and a lot of the houses had their garages set below grade.
Right.
And that water's just running right down. And I literally had a friend who had 3.5 feet of water in his garage.
Oh.
With a steel door with weather stripping.
Right.
The water was pushing against the door so tight it wasn't coming in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was barely, I should say, it was coming in, but it was coming in so slowly. But the water literally blew his garage door in, and that's one of those weird ones where, now how is that classified? Is that flood? Is that sewer backup? So you need to have a conversation and really go through that fine print so that you're protected, especially depending on where you live, especially.
Right. And it could be a sump pump failed. So if you've got your sump pump, there's the old one sitting right there, and a brand new one sitting in the hole. So you got to check that out. You might want to go down and check it, especially if you know rain's coming. If you haven't heard it in a while, and just go down and hit the float switch, make sure it's up and running and it works good.
Right. If you've got a finished basement, invest in a backup pump.
Without a
and set
question.
it near. Usually we set them about 4 inches below top of slab, so that way the whole underground drain tile system can take as much water as it can.
Right.
Before your emergency pump kicks in, especially if you've lost power, because you only got a battery to run it then at that point.
Right.
So, but a backup pump's really a good idea if you've got a fully finished basement.
And for $1,500, it's great insurance if you've got a finished basement. They set up now where they'll actually send you an alarm if there's anything wrong. It self-checks the battery, self-checks the pumps. So if anything goes wrong with that, it'll send you a text or an email and let you know something's wrong. Or if it's been activated, it will let you know. So that way you know your main pump's out and you need to replace that or repair it in some way. And then the last thing on the battery backup is to actually pipe that out separately. In case this pipe gets clogged from your main pipe, your battery backup should be piped out separately like this is here. And then that way you're covered. You don't have to worry about a bad pipe or anything like that. A lot of times those will get put together into the same pipe. Well, if it freezes, it's still not going to, it can't blow it out anywhere. So
yeah, not going to gain much.
No. So
is there a place I can go to watch a video about sump pumps?
I don't know. You might be able to go to Mighty House.
I'm pretty sure we did a show at Mighty House on our YouTube channel. We got a whole thing on sump pumps.
Yep. Yeah. So you can do that. And there's also a podcast, so you can go check out all the podcasts too. And iTunes are your favorite podcast thing. So then the last place maybe you want to check is look at that. That's like an aquarium right there.
A window well, an aquarium in your basement.
So these.
It's a wet terrarium.
Yes. So a lot of basement windows will be leaking, and you'll see the evidence on the concrete walls or around the trim if it's trimmed out. So make sure the leaves are cleaned out of that. Put a cover on it, and then make sure if it's got a drain that it's draining properly. So those are probably the 3 largest reasons for a basement flood. So there's also cracks in the walls and stuff like that, but
those are more leaks. They don't really cause floods.
Correct.
But
correct. That's it. So who do you call? Ghostbusters?
Nah, Serve Pro.
Serve Pro's one,
years.
and they're not a sponsor. It's just the ones we use around here a lot. There's also what's another one? Service Master. There's a lot of professional cleaning services that come in. They will work with your insurance company if you've got insurance coverage for it. They will have the blowers, and they'll come in. They'll cut the walls open, do everything you need to dry it out fast, and it's well worth the money to have them come in and get that stuff, get those blowers in there, and get things rolling. Especially if you've got insurance coverage, they'll take care of that, and they'll handle that part of it.
Even especially if you don't have insurance coverage, because you might pay these guys a few grand to get the place cut up, cleaned up, and dried out.
Right.
But you can start reconstruction. But if you're messing around with your insurance company for 2 months or a month,
right,
you've lost it. You know what I mean? You're still going to lose the battle, but you've lost your house. It's going to be mold and mildew, and now it's all on you. So really important. Just get it dried out quick.
That's it. So there you go. A couple things to do when your basement's flooded, and a couple things to look for when it does flood. And again, we're just going to hit that electrical safety one more time there, Sonar. We don't want to walk down in the basement, especially if the power's on. So if you see an extension cord like that, or it's flooded and you've got all kinds of...
If you know you've got outlets or any type of electrical devices below that water line, do not walk in the water, because if you potentially ground yourself, there you are.
There you go. Now that's the way to end the show right there, Sonar. That's perfect.
Yes, it is. Self-portrait.
So click on that subscribe button, dingle the bell, and next time we'll let you know when the next one gets posted. And with that,
keep it square and level.
Until next time. There you go. We actually got that one halfway good.
Yeah. That's good.
That wasn't too bad.
It's been a little bit.
We should have done this in our swimming trunks.
I am. Y'all Well, they see me from the waist up.